morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. I don't know if that's going to stick as my new catchphrase or whatever the heck you want to call it, but hey, it sounded pretty good the first time, so why not keep going with it? So today, I actually have a completely different type of topic I wanted to talk about, and that's going to be common among this podcast. I just like to talk about different things I'm thinking about, but not necessarily current events or even current shows. It just so happens to be the thing that got me thinking about this topic was because I was watching the new Tiger and Bunny season. Tiger and Bunny, the original season, is my favorite anime of all time. I love Tiger and Bunny so much for many different reasons, but I'll get into it later. But the main reason is because they're a perfect main character duo in my opinion. For now, I just want to talk about why I thought about this topic, other than just watching the show. By the way, if you're someone who's sensitive to spoilers for older shows, this is going to have quite a few. Last week, when I was discussing my unfinished story, I was talking about the bond system, and I got really excited about it, as you could probably tell. I put a lot of thought into how that system works, and I really want that system to come through, but part of that influence was certainly some of my favorite media, including stuff like Tiger and Bunny. But it got me into thinking, what other duos are there that are proper main character duos? I definitely can name a lot of duos in anime, video games, or maybe even books. However, a lot of them aren't main characters, and even the ones that aren't necessarily a proper main character duo. Usually they're like rivals, or maybe they're a duo, but they're more like a single unit. But for them to be a good duo, they need to be able to take their own character arcs as opposed to following the same character arc together. Now, of course, there's lots of duos that exist, like Banjo-Kazooie, or maybe even like Jak and Daxter, but I feel like them being a duo is not nearly as important. I actually don't know about later Jak and Daxter games. I've only played the first one, but hey, that's what I was thinking about. Also, rivals like Ryu and Ken, those are not duos, guys. I know no one's arguing with me, but the little part of my brain is arguing with me. I don't think rivals should count as duos, since rivals usually fight one another. And even if they're not fighting each other, they generally aren't working together, except when there's a common threat. For example, Goku and Vegeta hardly ever fight together. They're not a duo, but they're associated as a duo. Vegeta loses so much, I don't think it's even fair to call him a proper duo partner to Goku. Even if they were on the same power level at certain parts, Goku is the one who comes out on top, where Vegeta stands on the ground eating dirt. I also think stuff like 100% not a duo, except in one of their game franchises, is Mario and Luigi of Nintendo fame. Now hear me out. There's only one Mario and Luigi game where you get to play both of them as Mario and Luigi on even ground, and it's their RPG series called the Mario and Luigi series. As far as I'm aware, that is the only time where you get to play as both of them, and Mario is not obviously the main character. There is a small subsection of duos that I want to talk about as well. And I call this the partner duo. What that means is it's a duo, but there's one main character and then they have a partner character that usually accompanies them that is important, just not quite as important. To where if you didn't have them, the plot wouldn't change that much, except for very specific instances. In my experience, for most of these examples I have, the partner grows at the same rate that the main character grows and doesn't really have any of their own character arc, at least not till maybe near the end of their series. For example, my star child here of the partner duo has gotta be Ash and Pikachu. Listen, Pikachu is a very cute animal, but he is an electric rat. And Pikachu has definitely gone through small character arcs, but not nearly as many as Ash has. And not to mention, while Ash and Pikachu are definitely a duo, Pikachu is not a main character in the same way Ash is. He's as an extension of Ash, rather than Pikachu having his own personality, more than just being Ash's friend. Now, that's not to say Pikachu doesn't have a personality, but along with a lot of these other kids animes, they're more of like a marketable sidekick. And that's a good way to explain a lot of the partners. They feel very much like a sidekick. There's Tai and Agumon. Agumon has more of a character development than Pikachu, but he's still like a dinosaur that just kind of follows Tai around. Another example is Sonic and Tails. Tails follows Sonic around a lot of the time, especially in the show, and there are times where Tails saves Sonic, but it's pretty rare and far between. And the games are called Sonic. They're not Sonic and Tails. If we go outside the realms of anime and video games, you even have Batman and Robin. And when I refer to Batman and Robin, I mean the original duo, because of course now Robin has his own personality and stuff, but that came mostly in the form of his own comics. Batman without Robin is still Batman, or at least he wasn't on the same footing as Batman in importance. But when Robin broke off into his own, or became the Teen Titans leader, that was his own character arc, not related to the Batman comics. Now there are some examples of some shows I would consider partner duos for sure, that do have characters that do have their own character arc and feel more important in general, but they're still a backseat to their main partners. My biggest example of this is Yugi and Atem from Yu-Gi-Oh! Atem is 100% more important for 90% of the show until the very last season. Even then, Atem was very important for that season, and Yugi was just trying to save him. But Yugi didn't really become his own character until after he separated from Atem in Season 5. Now, there were moments where Yugi was certainly putting up his best, and his personality is different enough to where you feel like they are two separate characters, but Yugi and Atem are side by side, literally within the puzzle and their body, since they share the same body. And whatever Yugi learns comes from Atem's playing in Yugi's body. So I genuinely think that Yugi is definitely a partner or sidekick to Atem, even though I think they are both main characters. Another good example of this that I had written down was there's a game called Mega Man Star Force. Normally in Mega Man games, Mega Man is the main character. And it's true that this game has a Mega Man, but the Mega Man persona is actually more of like a costume or a superhero outfit, where you have the actual main character and his partner who turns him into Mega Man. Because it's a human boy instead of a robot or a program, and then his alien partner who is like made of alien waves, and then he fuses with him and they become Mega Man together. The alien has his own troubles, but they aren't even nearly as important to what's happening on Earth. And the main character, who I can't even remember his name right now, definitely has more things that are important that are going on, while the alien partner is the sidekick. He just kind of stands back and gives advice, almost like a mentor character, but they're still working together, so I can't say that entirely. Oh, right, I forgot I wrote this. Any kid show with an inanimate object as a partner. So this is just basically any show like Beyblade or Bakugan, anything where the main character has like an inanimate object that talks to them or does something like that to them. Alright, so this is the last one for the partner duos I'll mention, but I think is the closest to getting to a real duo as you could get from a piece of fiction, while I still classify it as a partner duo. That would be Master Chief and Cortana. The Chief doesn't really have too much of a character arc outside of saving the world, but Cortana does have a lot of growth, which then affects the Chief. Now, you play as the Chief. As far as the story is concerned, Cortana is more of a main character than Chief is. Chief is just the guy who's supposed to shoot the aliens and get to his objective, but Cortana's the one who ends up making most of the real choices. That's not to say Chief doesn't have human moments where he makes his choices, but he is definitely a soldier. Now, I think they're a very good partner duo in a lot of ways, and they are borderlining that duo idea, but Cortana and Chief spend enough time apart in the third game, as well as leaving him in the fourth game. Them being a duo is not nearly as important as you might think, but Cortana does rub off on Chief, which then allows Chief to have more of a character. I don't know why I think of these things, but I find it interesting, and I hope you do too. Anyway, I think that's enough for the partner duos. I know that a lot of them are considered pretty big duos, but I do think there are some who really exhibit that true main character duo dynamic, and I'll get into that right now. A true main character duo is two characters meeting up, becoming more together while still feeling like their own characters and going through their own issues. Now, they don't all have to meet up near the beginning of the series. They could have met up before the beginning of the series, but they had to have become a duo before the real meat of the show starts. I'll start with my first example. Vincent and Leo from A Way Out. This is a pair, a couple of cards if you will, that both have a similar interest of turning in and or killing the man they know as Harvey, the main antagonist of the game and the reason why they're in prison now. I don't think there's many other duos in video games that really exemplify what I'm trying to show here than Vincent and Leo from A Way Out. The game is designed as co-op intended. You pay $30 and someone owns the game and the other person can play for free, so you still get the full experience of the game. It's meant to be played cooperative. There is no other way to enjoy it, and I think that improves it vastly. Really gives you the sense that these two are strangers who slowly become friends. They do an excellent job of making sure that you know these two people, while they have the same goal in mind, they come from different backgrounds and they come with different motivations. Leo has a wife and a kid that he wants to go back to out of prison. That's his main reason for breaking out, besides taking down Harvey. And Vincent has a wife who's got a baby on the way, so he wants to break out of prison so he can be with them, especially since he wasn't there for them to begin with because of his job. And you don't feel like one of them is more important than the other. Spoilers for A Way Out, that last section of the game where you have to turn on each other is so heart-wrenching because you've built up this trust between the two of them this whole time, and then you have to choose between the two of you who deserves to live, and it just makes you so sad to kill either of them. Both have faults, but you want them to rectify those faults so much. I think I might be rambling a little bit now, but Vincent and Leo, great duo. Another duo that I think is pretty good is Kamina and Simone for Gurren Lagann. They are a really good couple of dudes who just want to get out of their hole. You got the guy who's the digger, and you got the guy who's the inspirer, the leader. They make a good pair, and while it might be cheap to call them a duo because Kamina dies like halfway through the first half of the season, and it's so jarring, you never expect it when you're first watching because they feel like main characters through and through, and then when Kamina finally does die, you don't believe it because it doesn't feel like a thing they would do when these characters are so closely knit together. It almost feels like the show betrays your trust because they do such a good job of making you feel like these two need each other. But even though they do need each other, they definitely both have their own characters. The fact that Kamina thinks that his death is valid in order to save everyone else shows that he was living his life the best way he thought, and he made sure Simone kept that motivation. There's also the twin star exorcists. Now normally I don't enjoy the idea of two characters that are supposed to be romantically interested in each other considered as a duo, since a duo is more about having them be individuals and then becoming team while still maintaining their personality. And usually when it's a romantic thing, they tend to follow the same path. Even when they have their own character arcs, it sometimes comes off as them as a unit as opposed to them as a duo. Maybe one of the partners is applying for college and worried about their college scores, and then the romantic interest says something very similar, and they kind of go through that process every time. Sometimes you do get something a little bit more unique here and there, but that's generally how it goes. Which is not a bad thing, but not really a duo in my head. But in Twin Star, they're actually not set up to be falling in love at the beginning. Granted, they do fall in love with each other, but that was never promised at the beginning. Okay, so down to the meat and potatoes. My 3 favorite duos, and I'll explain why. The first couple of characters on my list are Edward and Alphonse Elric from Fullmetal Alchemist. Now, you could definitely argue that Edward is more of a main character than Alphonse, but there is no doubt that Alphonse has enough of a personality and a reason to be a main character, as well as Ed's partner. Not only just because they're brothers and they both lost their bodies, they've trained together, they've fought together, they've laughed together, they've cried together, they know each other better than anyone. Yet their personalities couldn't be farther from different. Edward is impulsive, completely angry at the world sometimes, and will do just about anything to get what he needs. He'll lie, he'll go under people's noses, he'll also sacrifice so much of his own personal health just to try and get back his brother's body, because he blames himself. And then you have Alphonse, the younger of the two brothers. Alphonse feels cold. He can't enjoy anything that a human can. He's just a suit of armor, and he really wonders if he's even still there, if he's even human. While he's stronger than Ed in a lot of ways, he's weaker in resolve. He didn't even realize he could use the technique that Ed uses to create alchemy until about a fourth of the way into the show. And that's because Al was hiding his memories from himself to protect himself. But in the end, they're partners and brothers, so they support each other completely, and they try not to get in each other's ways, but they also try to make sure that they go on the right paths. Al tries to make sure Ed doesn't blow his gasket every single time someone calls him short, but he also is there for whenever Ed's not feeling all there. And Ed's always there for Al, making sure he promises to get his body back, truly believing in it, even after realizing the Philosopher's Stone was made with human souls. He still had the drive to find a way to fix his brother's body. They are definitely a perfect duo in almost every way, but I think I know two others that are just a little better. Now granted, this duo is from my favorite manga series of all time, and I'm a little biased. I did read it when I was younger, but I actually didn't finish it until I was older. In fact, it was even after Fullmetal Alchemist, which is one of my favorite animes. But when I did finally finish it, I think Zatch Bell might be the one manga that feels like it wasn't rushed at the very end and truly gave me a satisfying ending of two partners facing against 99 opponents. And even in 2004, a battle royale wasn't all that unique of an idea in Japan, but not a super well-known one here in the US. Granted though, battle royales today are more of like a close-knit, within a couple of hours, maybe a few days type thing if it's a show. There's several examples with Squid Game, there's Hunger Games, and even games like Fortnite or Apex Legends. While the games have cooperative shooting, there's no real story to enjoy over there. And in the shows I mentioned, it was every man for themselves. But Zatch Bell is not only an anime with a duo main protagonist, but every enemy they face is a duo. Because the whole idea is that the demon children were brought into the human world to do a battle that takes place every 1,000 years, where they find a human partner, and whoever is the last one becomes king of the demons. Zatch doesn't know his past at first, and Kyo is an outcast. Zatch helps Kyo start to become more social and make friends, while giving his confidence a boost as well by helping them win battles. And after Zatch helps Kyo realize that friendship's way more important than just being smarter than everyone else, Kyo goes out of his way to try and help Zatch not only achieve his goal of being a kind king, but also to make sure he gets his memories back, and between the two of them, they're able to make friends with a lot of the other partners. With Tia, Porygon, Kanshime, even though they all fight at some point, they all become Zatch's friend because they all share the common goal. They have to save the world multiple times together, but the only way they can keep getting stronger is by increasing their friendship. And their strength of bond is what literally powers their book of spells. The more that they got closer, the more you realize their duoship is amazing. The more you read, the more you feel on their journey together with them. And they still feel like unique characters, even though they work so close together. Kyo learns that Zatch can't use his powers properly because he always blacks out when he uses them. So Kyo devises a new strategy that helps Zatch take down these foes. Plus, Zatch is just a lovable character in general, and Kyo being a more stick in the mud, you see as he softens up throughout the series, only getting really serious when things get dire. I love Zatch Bell so much, and it is still my favorite manga of all time. I have all of the English mangas, which took forever to get. Lo and behold, guess what? They only made 25 out of the 33 mangas available for the US. I'm hoping they'll re-release the original Zatch Bell in some kind of omnibus, where it's all in English so I can just read it all physically instead of having to use my digital copy. But while I think Kyo and Zatch are an amazing duo, I think Tiger and Bunny is still my favorite duo in all of anime. Where do I even begin about this show? First of all, let me clarify, this show came out 5 years before My Hero Academia, back in 2011, and it was all about superheroes. It certainly had more of a Western influence, but it is still my favorite show to this day. The basic premise of the show, Kotetsu Kaburagi, is a hero in the city of Stearnsville, where they host a reality TV show called Hero TV. Or maybe not reality TV show, more like a game show. Every person they save and every criminal they capture, they get more points for that season. And the winner at the end of the season gets crowned King of Heroes. And in this world, heroes with superpowers are called nexts, kind of like mutants from X-Men. They're pretty far and few between, but they exist to a level where people are aware of them. And Hero TV has gotten rid of a lot of the stigma that nexts have. But it's been around about 30 years or so by the time Tiger is where we are in the story, at the very beginning. And Tiger is kind of a has-been hero, although he's still participating in hero duties. He's not exactly the most popular. He has an ability called the 100 power. Any sense or strength that a human has, it's times 100. Now, he kind of has a Mr. Incredible complex and ends up destroying a lot more than he actually can afford, because he thinks it's in the mind of saving people's lives. No price is too much. But because this is a TV show, all these heroes are sponsored by people. He destroyed too many things, and his business that he was working for was about to drop him before another business bought up his company and his employment. But they know Kotetsu isn't a very popular hero, so they're pairing him up with a new hero who has the exact same power as Kotetsu, but he's young and he's super cool, and he's very focused on like the game, where Kotetsu is more focused on actually saving people. His name is Barnaby Brooks Jr. What makes them such a good duo is that they borderline hate each other at the beginning of the series. And by the end of the series, it feels like they've been friends forever. It feels so natural how they rub off on each other. Kotetsu slowly starts becoming less reckless, and he spends more time with his family and understands that he is not as important as he used to think he was, but he can still save lives. And Barnaby understands more that being a hero isn't just the revenge life, because as we learn to discover, Barnaby actually became a hero because he wanted revenge for his parents' murders. And Kotetsu's sense of justice rubbed off on him to where Barnaby starts to realize that revenge isn't the answer. But this show genuinely feels like two human beings, because on the backside of the whole TV aspect is them living their real lives, and you see them behind the mask. Kotetsu and Barnaby have to work together because of their job. And there's this really good commentary of like, is being a hero all about saving people's lives, or is it more about standing for a precedent? What I'm trying to say is that Kotetsu Kaburagi and Barnaby Brooks Jr., otherwise known as Tiger and Bunny, are an amazing duo, and they feel equally as important to the story in every moment, to where you genuinely want to know how each of their stories are going to resolve. These two are my favorite duo in anime, and I think duos can do a lot in anime, but duos aren't very popular in the general scheme of things, and I know why. The main reason why duos are not popular in shows, or at the very least not common, is because you have two main characters. That's a lot harder to write and market than one main character. And you have to give them equal depth. You can't just make one of them better if you want them to be a proper duo. And that's really hard to balance. Unless you're someone who really enjoys the idea of two characters working together and becoming a duo and not being romantically interested in one another, it might be harder to get into the idea of two characters versus one that you have to invest your time into. When you're making a show and you want it to have lots of characters, sometimes you can't give them as much depth. For example, My Hero Academia, one of its problems was it had Deku front and center for so long, but there were so many of these shallow side characters. While people loved them, of course, they weren't really that important. So they ended up having to make every character that they thought was even remotely important have some kind of arc, which is all good and everything, but then it takes away from Deku. So how do you expect someone to want to do two main characters with the same amount of depth, still being very important, each of them, while still having each other as supports and making each other grow? It's a very difficult tightrope to balance, I imagine. Not to mention adding a supporting cast on top of that who all have their own backstories. But somehow, Tiger and Bunny does it. Every character feels important. Every character has a backstory. A duo is also hard to market for those who like to put themselves as the place of the heroes. Because someone like Deku is pretty simple on a base level. Someone like Tanjiro from Demon Slayer is really easy to understand. A teenager could pretend in their head, oh, that's me, I'm them. Or Kirito's another good example. Or maybe even someone like Ash from Pokemon. Someone who doesn't have that much depth. But when you make it a duo, there's not necessarily an easy way for someone to put themselves into one of the two characters unless they are specifically marketing two very specific types. But at that point, why wouldn't you just have a team-based story to cover all your bases, like Teen Titans or Power Rangers, which most people only care about what color they are? I have definitely rambled a lot this podcast, and hopefully it didn't come off as too nonsensical, but I enjoyed talking about it at least, and I hope you enjoyed listening to it. I don't really have too much else to say. I just really like Tiger and Bunny, and watching the second season really made me want to talk about it and other duos in anime. It also made me think about Zatchbell and how much I love that. Basically what I'm saying is this has just been one big let me talk about things I like that no one's ever heard of or barely remembers. Now for my recommendation, in the spirit of this dynamic duo topic, I would like to recommend a couple of gentlemen that are pretty well known on the internet, but they recently brought back the show that I like, and that's the 10-Minute Power Hour by The Grumps. I probably don't need to explain it to anyone. It's like watching your friends goof off, and it's just a good old time, and I'm really happy that it's back. But yeah, I hope you guys have a good day, and Baba Booey.